Welcome to the Hockey Writers Blackhawks Banter, a weekly show with our top Chicago Blackhawks writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from Chelsea Dagger to the Madhouse on Madison, our team covers everything that happens with the Hawks. So get comfortable, grab a beverage. It's time for some Blackhawks Banter. Blackhawks Banter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the new episode of Blackhawks Banter, presented by the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Greg Boysen. As always, I'm joined by my cohorts, my partners in crime, my colleagues over at the hockeywriters.com, our wonderful Chicago Blackhawks writing crew, Gail, Kauchak, Shaun Filippelli, and Brooke LoFurno. Welcome in, guys. Glad to see everybody south of the border survive their long holiday weekend.
Yes.
And Shaun, I hope you just had a nice weekend, since that's what it was for you guys up there. Excuse me. This is the 54th episode of Blackhawks Banter, and the pickings were slim to who to dedicate this episode to, but it actually worked out pretty well. This is the Anton Lindholm episode. He wore 54 for the Hawks in the preseason last year. Never played for the Hawks, was with the IceHogs. You may remember we got him in the Brandon Saad trade with Colorado. The reason I picked him, there's only 3 guys ever wear 54, and he's the only one I've heard of. And today, the day we're recording this, the 29th, it's his birthday. So happy birthday.
Aww.
Rockford IceHogs legend and Anton Lindholm. All right, we got the fun stuff out of the way, and it's time to get to the business, the meat of the matter, why we're here. We're going to talk about the week that was for the Blackhawks, and also kind of look ahead to the upcoming week and beyond. We've got some good stuff to talk about. The Blackhawks, I think we all were kind of in unison last week. We kind of thought the Hawks were going to get like 3 out of 4 or 3 or 4 points in the 3 games they had last week. That unfortunately didn't go their way, as they just picked up 2 points in their 3 games. The loss at Calgary, they beat the Blues in overtime, which is always fun. And then they got shut out by the San Jose Sharks the other night. So let's just get right to it. And one of our popular topics, I don't know if it's popular, but it's something that always needs to be talked about, is the lineup. Brooke, you wanted to talk about the lineup, specifically the bottom 6, and you wrote about it and had us discuss it in our Blackhawks Banter preview post, which you can check out at thehockeywriters.com. And you wanted to address the bottom 6, and you'd like to see Derek King kind of spread the wealth, so to speak. So tell us exactly what you want to see with that bottom 6 going forward.
So my first kind of reaction to the bottom 6 is I want it gone. I want a complete overhaul of it, but it doesn't seem like that's what the team wants. It seems like they want to stick with what they got. So if they want to stick with it, then I guess the only solution is to just spread it out again. I guess there's really no easy solution to this because it doesn't seem like anything's working. So if you're going to spread it out, my first thought was actually move Kubalik down. And I know we talked about this before, that he deserves to be on the top lines, but even him being on the top lines right now is just not doing much for him. And honestly, him moving down maybe to the 3rd or 4th line, honestly, instantly gives those bottom lines skill and offense off the bat. My second solution was maybe moving Hagel down. And I know that might be unpopular, but I think we talked about this before, that he's not exactly a first line player, but that's where he was put, because they don't really have any other options. So again, moving him down would again bring instant skill to that line. But I know he's done very well on the first line. That's not a knock on him. It's just a suggestion. And I know we talked about Kirby Dach moving down because that seems still like the most plausible situation, but that doesn't seem like that is going to happen anytime soon either. So you know what? You got to work with what you got. Anytime you see skill, there's very limited options to do with that, but anytime you can, just spread it out, because it doesn't seem to be working all bunched up.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with the the Hagel comment. I mean, I know he's a fan favorite, and he does well when he gets to play in that top line, but I think his skill set is built more for a 3rd line role. And I think he can excel better because he won't be playing against other teams' top lines in that scenario. So definitely a good suggestion. Gail, you mentioned that you get what the Blackhawks are trying to do in becoming a quote unquote grinding team, which to me is just a nice way of saying we can't score, so we're going to try really hard. But you want to see them, infuse some more scorers in that bottom six. I think we all do. That's not an exclusive thought. And one of the players you mentioned was Philipp Kurashev as a guy you kind of want to see get a bigger role. What are your thoughts about our guy Phil?
Yeah, Kurashev, he seems to kind of be moving around a lot in the lineup. And, he was been on the fourth line of late. I didn't really like him there. He was even made a healthy scratch against the Flames last week. But I like that he got back on the third line with the Blues. There's some skill there in his rookie season. He actually played top line. He kind of got thrust into the role, but he played on the top line center with Kane and DeBrincat a bunch and actually did pretty well for himself. 8 goals and 16 points in 54 games. He's smart, he's skilled. And, it's funny, Coach King actually gave Kurashev a huge vote of confidence by putting him on the second line in the Sharks game. So he has been all up and down. I don't know if I like that second line because Dominik Kubalik then goes down to the third. And of course, Brooke just brought that up. I don't think he should be. I think Dominik Kubalik should be in the top 6 for sure. So Kubalik, Kurashev on the third line. I think that could really kind of give them that a little bit more of an offensive punch, make it more of a checking line and more of a threat to score with him there. Along with Dylan Strome, I have no idea why they're scratching Dylan Strome. This is just beyond me. So those would kind of be the 2 guys that I would think maybe could give a little bit more punch to the bottom 6, specifically the third line. And one more thing before we pass it on here, that in regards to scoring threats, I really just think that they missed the boat with the offensive talent of Adam Gaudette. They never gave him an extended look. They never gave him a chance to prove himself in the lineup. And I really just think that mixed in with the grinding players, such as, Kara, Ryan Hartman, Reese Johnson, and Mike Hardman. If you were able to mix Adam Gaudette in there, I really think that you never know. We never know because they never gave him a chance. So, he got put on waivers Friday, picked up by the Ottawa Senators Saturday. I think it was a missed opportunity, but I wish Gaudette the best of luck in his fresh start with the Senators.
Yeah, there must have been something we're not seeing, something in practice. I mean, it's 2 teams give up on him in less than a year. 2 coaches here in Chicago, neither of them want to play him. I mean, yeah, we talked about him for weeks, and RIP to our weekly Adam Gaudette needs to play segment. It was a nice run, but it's officially come to an end. If we had a Senators show, we can have them transfer power, but I don't know. There must have been something we're not seeing. Maybe he just doesn't try hard in practice. Maybe there's an attitude thing there. I don't want to start rumors, but something is there that both Colleton and King didn't want to give him a shot. So there's something that we're not being told that they're seeing that we're not. So we just got to move on. As you said, best of luck. Hopefully he can catch on. Listen, if you can't make it on the Senators roster, then you may need to think of a new career path.
We shall see.
And we mentioned his name, and we're going to actually talk about him again. It's not officially a Blackhawks Banter episode 2. We talk about Dylan Strome and what the heck is going on with him. And Shaun, that's who you wanted to bring up again this week. As Gail mentioned, he was a healthy scratch against the Blues. And that had you puzzled. And, this whole situation, it's insanity. So, what do you think he's got to do to get in the lineup on a regular basis and stay there besides, score a hat trick every night?
Well, I mean, on that note, it sounds so obvious, but his lack of production is obviously a concern. And I think that's what's probably holding him back the most. His coaches are obviously feeling that he's not doing enough in that regard. He's there to produce and he's not doing it. Let's call a spade a spade. He's got 3 points in 12 games. That's just not enough for what he's there to do. He's not a hitter. He's not a blocker. He's not a grinder. He's there to produce. So he's not doing that enough, and that's going to keep him out of the lineup. However, with that said, again, going back to this point, he's only been in 12 games. I just still don't think that they're giving him an opportunity to actually succeed. I don't think they're setting him up to have a good run of seeing what he's capable of this year. even if it's exactly what we've expected of him in the past and what we've seen come out of him, then let him do at least that much. Meaning, put him with DeBrincat, put him in a position to succeed, and see what happens. What do they have to lose at this point? Let him get into the lineup. Let him have more of a run to see what he can actually do. They keep chopping away at his minutes. It's been a roller coaster ride. If you look at his average ice time on any given night, even being in the dot, he kind of comes and goes. But ultimately, he wins more faceoffs than he loses. So let him at least do his job. Do that. Put him in a position to succeed with players that will produce around him. It'll help his numbers, and ultimately that helps the Hawks anyway. At the end of the day, what that's going to ultimately do is increase his trade value. So even if they're looking to get rid of him, let him play so we can get some points and actually make more of a name for himself in the small sample size he'll have this season.
And according to the rumors and reports coming out there, they have been trying to trade him, and then they're surprised that there's no value out there. It's like, well, what did you expect?
Yeah, play him.
Don't play the guy. There's going to be no trade value. So it's dumb. We've gotten to the point where this whole thing is dumb, and it just, you either play him or let him go. I feel like Moses, let my people go. Just, you're doing a disservice to him at this point, and you're hurting his career, and that's not right. When Coach King decided to switch up his lines a little bit, I think it was before the Blues game, and he called the line stale. So he wanted to mix things up. And I understand we want to be a grinding team now. They're trying to change their identity all of a sudden. The problem with that for me is there's too many of the same guys on the roster. And, you got Carpenter, you got Jujhar Khaira, and then, of course, Mike Hardman, Reese Johnson. I don't want to seem like I'm picking on those guys, but I'm kind of picking on those guys. Not their fault. But you get those four guys in the lineup, it's four guys that do the exact same thing. And being scoring threats is not one of the things they do. Granted, Reese Johnson, ever since, I said last week that he is like not a threat at all to score, puts up 3 points in 2 games in my face. I'll gladly eat crow on that one if he keeps producing. So I like what Carpenter and Khaira bring in the lineup. They're veterans. They can kill penalties. They bring a toughness and some size. Hardman and Johnson, it's the same thing. Too much redundancy in this bottom six. So King called the line stale. So maybe it's time we go to Rockford and bring up some guys. Let Johnson and Hardman go back to Rockford. Bring up some guys from there that can get some freshness to the stale bottom six. First guy I'm bringing up, a name we've talked about before, is Alex Nylander. I think it's time to put him back at the NHL level. You look at his numbers in Rockford, just 6 goals and 2 points in 15 games. They don't blow you out of the water, but that's a team overall that struggles to score. Shocking. But he's got his skating back. He's got his shiftiness back. He's made some nice plays this past week. He had the game-winning goal that beat Milwaukee on Sunday night in the third period. And most importantly, he's got his confidence back out there. He looks like a confident player coming off that injury. I think it's time to bring him up, put him in the third line, and see what happens. Yes, he's not a savior. He kind of is what he is at this point, but at least he's a guy that has some offensive ability and can bring some secondary scoring. 2 other guys I want to see up real quick from Rockford in the near future, Josiah Slavin and Andre Altabar-Makian. It's time to see what these guys can do at the NHL level. Slavin, I'm a big fan of his. He's big, he's physical, but he could skate and he could score. He's played on the penalty kill a lot for Rockford. He's got 2 shorthanded goals. He knows when to be physical. He knows when to be smart. He's just a good all-around player. Put him out there if you got a chance. And Altabar-Makian, I've talked about him a lot. I'm a big fan of his. I like what he brings to the table. He's cut from that same type of cloth as Brendan Hagel. Now, I don't know if he's as good of a player as Hagel, but he's that type of guy. His motor is always going. He never takes a shift off. He'll hit anything that moves. He doesn't mind causing some stuff on the ice to get under his opponent's skin. And he could score every once in a while. So listen, we're not scoring goals with Reese Johnson and Mike Hardman. Let's get some other guys in there. And if we don't score goals with them, how are we worse off than we were? We can only go up at this point. And just another quick update from Rockford. They had a tough weekend. They did get 3 points, but Saturday they lost Brett Conley, their second leading scorer. He suffered a lower body injury. Interim coach Anders Sorensen said he's day-to-day yesterday, so hopefully they get him back. He's been a huge part of that team. And then yesterday, Lucas Reichel took a nasty hit. He was kind of already falling, and a Milwaukee defenseman then smashed him into the boards face first. He was a little woozy. He didn't come back in the game, but this play happened late in the third period. Sorensen did not have an update after the game last night, but I will be talking with him media day on Tuesday morning. So I'm sure that's going to be the first question he's asked. If nobody else will, I'll ask it. So hopefully Lucas Reichel is okay. I didn't mention bringing him up, not because he's hurt, but just because I'm fine with him playing in Rockford. We've had that discussion. Check out those episodes in the archives. All right, enough of the lineup for now. We're going to get back to the lineup as a whole in a few minutes. But Shaun, surprisingly enough, has wanted us to go back into the blue paint and talk some goaltending this week. And you recently wrote about Marc-Andre Fleury and his case to be a Hall of Famer. And you want to talk about his resurgence after a tough start to the season. Granted, he didn't get a lot of help in front of him, but he didn't do himself a lot of favors those first handful of starts. But he's been much better in November. So plain and simple, which version of Marc-Andre Fleury do you think the Blackhawks can count on the rest of the way?
They certainly better hope that they get the November version, and I will back that stance and say that they will, with a little bit of an asterisk in that he had an outstanding November, as we know. I mean, that obviously he needed that. He needed that from a confidence boost perspective and for the team's perspective. But ultimately, as the team started to play better, so did Fleury. And as Fleury started to play better, so did the team. That's not a coincidence. We knew that. In October, they all played like crap, and so did he, as you've just touched on. So we're going to see more of the same from Fleury the rest of the way through. And that's not, that's not a hot take by any stretch, because if you look back on his, he's now in his 18th year in the NHL. This is the pattern that he's set. He's set the type of performances that we've now seen through November. This is why the Blackhawks wanted to get Fleury. This is what they need out of him. I understand that they pumped up the rest of their lineup, but if you're going to have a future Hall of Famer in net, you need to get these kinds of performances out of him. Now, I will cap that off by saying that some of those numbers were a little bit of a stretch as far as being able to sustain them. Obviously, he had some pretty busy nights throughout the stretch of November, and I don't think it's safe to assume that that'll sustain. But interestingly, when you look at his numbers now, how he's been able to balance out throughout 2021-22, his new numbers, including his November results, are essentially right in line with what he's done throughout his career. So that's an obvious pattern that's quite easily sustainable, since that's the pattern that he's already set. So it's safe to say that we should expect more of this, perhaps a little bit of regression, but nowhere near the failures he was having in October. We're going to see a lot more of what he did through November, and maybe a little bit less of that, but more consistently, and more consistent success out of him the rest of the way.
For sure. Where he definitely looks like more like the Marc-Andre Fleury we've been used to seeing everywhere else he's been in his career. But he's not the only goaltender playing better. Kevin Lankinen has won 2 out of his last 3 starts, and in those 2 wins, he stopped 43 of the 46 shots he faced. So he's definitely been improved. And with his improved play, Brooke, I'm going to ask you: do you think does he deserve more starts while he's playing well, or do you think just being the backup, playing once every handful of games is what's best?
See, my first thought was, no, I don't think he deserves more playing time. And that's not a knock on him. He's been great. It's more about the fact that Fleury was acquired. He was paid. He should carry the load at this point. And I think for Lankinen at this point, he's proved what we kind of already knew from last year, that he's a solid backup goalie. He maybe isn't a starter, but he's very solid in that role. And you know what? I think he should continue riding on that. Obviously, Fleury's 37 years old. He might need a couple days off here and there, and that's great for Lankinen. But as of right now, I say I don't know if that's really deserving, or it's more just they have Fleury. He's a number 1 goaltender. You have to play him.
Yeah. You maybe give Lankinen maybe one more start every other week than you would have. And you mentioned Fleury's 37, and we saw his season didn't end very well last year. He lost his job in the playoffs. Maybe that had to do with he had to be the number 1 guy there when Leonard was hurt. Who knows? So it is nice to know you've got a reliable guy in case you need to go a couple games in a row without your number 1. Gail, we're going to throw this next question to you, Gail. Are you a little bit concerned when we talk about the play of Fleury in the month of November, and it was much better, but when you look at those 3 losses, they came against the upper echelon of teams in the NHL. They came against very teams, and 4 out of his 5 wins were against teams that are kind of in the same heap as the Blackhawks. You would say subpar teams. Is that a concern for you, or are you just happy to see them playing better as a whole?
I have a little bit of a theory about this. I personally think that they wanted to get a bit of light a bit of a fire under Fleury, set him up to succeed a little bit. So, he's a future Hall of Fame goalie, comes here on the tail end of an illustrious career, and he commits to this team that's stinking it up right out of the gate. And then there's the off-ice scandal to go along with that. And so, Fleury's probably thinking, what in the HE double hockey sticks did I do here? So the new staff comes in and they say, let's give you a chance to redeem yourself against your old team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. That goes well. All right, let's go with the hot hand. We're going to give them the Arizona and Seattle games. But then after that, there was back-to-back games against Edmonton and Vancouver. Now, wouldn't you think that you would take your starter, which is Fleury, and give him the tougher opponent, which would be Edmonton? But they didn't do that. They gave Lankinen the tougher opponent, Fleury the easier one. And then they did the same thing the last two games. Lankinen got St. Louis, which is arguably better in the standings anyway than San Jose. So I personally think that they were setting him up to succeed because they know he has it in him. And they really wanted to build his confidence back up. And then meanwhile, you got Lankinen saying, all right, you give me all the tough guys, bring it on. I got this. So it's a win-win and it builds the competition. So to answer your question, I am not concerned about this. I think that Fleury needed to get his groove back, which he's done in this month. And he's going to be ready for some stiffer competition in December, as Lankinen will be as well when his number is called.
Sure. And there's a date that we need to be mindful of and going forward, especially when it comes to Marc-Andre Fleury, and that's March 21st, 2022. That is the NHL trade deadline. You hear about it from the pundits across the league. American Thanksgiving, that's kind of like the date where you figure out who's who in the league, where since I think 2005, since after the lockout, 77% of the teams that were in a playoff spot on American Thanksgiving ended up making the playoffs. And as we know, the Blackhawks are not in a playoff position. Sure, they're a lot closer than they were a few weeks ago, but they dug themselves quite a hole. And that new coach, Serge, is kind of, worn off. And now we're kind of back in a 500 stage. So it's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs. So that's a date they got to be mindful of. And as we get into February, if they're out of it, Fleury is definitely a guy that they need to look to trade, and getting him to play well helps that. And I know, he didn't want to be traded here in the first place necessarily, but he's also, not getting any younger and probably wants another chance for a cup. And chances are that's not going to happen this season. It's the end of his contract. The Blackhawks can play it smart. They're already paying his entire salary. That's why they didn't have to give up anything to get him. So you can just retain the entire salary in any trade and get a really good return, either a prospect or a high pick, maybe one of each. If there's a team that's a contender, say the Edmonton Oilers, all of a sudden they don't have goaltending that they can rely on. You think they're not going to want to give up a big piece to get a Marc-Andre Fleury? Jack Campbell gets hurt in Toronto. What happens? Here come the Blackhawks saying, we'll keep his whole salary, but we want this and this. I think a lot of teams would jump on that. So they could be in a very unique situation to turn him into quite the return. But we'll see how that is. Obviously, if the Blackhawks are fighting for a playoff spot in March, I don't think that happens. But, they've got a long way to go before they can really consider themselves in that mix. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on. And speaking of things to keep an eye on, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of Blackhawks Banter. Any of our shows across the THW landscape, we got a lot of great shows out there. We got plenty of team-specific shows and other shows as well. So whatever you're looking for, we got it. And if you can't find it on our YouTube channel, head over to thehockeywriters.com. We got you covered. We got all kinds of great content over there. You can also sign up for the Morning Skate newsletter, morningskate.io. You'll get the content delivered right to your inbox every morning, and some unique features that you can only get exclusively on that newsletter. So make sure you're signed up there. Also, If you're big into the whole Discord thing, we've got a server over there, the Hockey Lounge. That's where a lot of our writers, not only on the Blackhawks team, but all across our staff, hang out, talk during the games, after games. You guys can head over there, join the discussion, give us some ideas on what you want to hear future episodes. We love hearing from you guys. We love the feedback. If you guys weren't watching, they wouldn't waste everybody's time in having us record every week. So you guys make this possible out there, and we appreciate it. So join us in the discussion. And speaking of discussions, we'll get right back to it. Back to the Blackhawks lineup, and more specifically, the lineup as a whole and its lack of offense. And we're trying not to be redundant, but we'll overlap some issues here. But Gail, you wrote about some lineup changes you want to see coming up and to help with this lack of offense. And you wrote what can be done to jumpstart the offense that has just 8 goals in its last 5 games, just 7 in regulation. So what are your suggestions here about how this team can finally score?
All right. Well, like you said, we already kind of talked about the bottom 6 and trying to infuse some scoring threat there. And yeah, the Blackhawks certainly are in a bit of a drought of late. All teams go through this, but I do have a few lineup suggestions, obviously. So first and foremost, I get that you want to split up some of your best players, maybe to jumpstart others. But then, and I'm talking about Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat here. But then you witness them, the overtime win in the Blues game. And it's just, the first thing that came to my mind was put them back together, just put them on the same line together. They've got that punch, they've got that chemistry. They're going to score, if you put them together. So, and I also think that, so put them back together. And I'd like to see Jonathan Toews actually as their center. Nothing against Doc, but we know that he's kind of been struggling. And we know that he can't win faceoffs, and he hasn't scored in a really long time as well. So, maybe this would be a way to jumpstart Jonathan Toews. He can win those faceoffs, and he can they can have that nice, awesome first line, nuclear line, so to speak. Now, of course, this would move Brandon Hagel down to the second line along with Doc. And of course, I already said that I think that Dominik Kubalik should be on the second line as well. So with the two of them, the 3 of those guys together, Dominik Kubalik, he's the best thing he does is shoot. So put him with somebody that's going to give him the puck. Doc is known as the setup guy. So I just think that maybe trying them together would be a good combination. And then, you can't go wrong really anywhere that you put Hagel in the lineup. He's going to give that energy and support. So these are kind of my lineup ideas for the top 6.
Yeah, there's options there, but I think the bottom line is guys just got to start doing their jobs and producing. Shaun, do you agree with Gail that Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane need to be back on the same line?
Of course, absolutely. As I'm sure we all do, as I'm sure every listener does and every viewer does, that there's no good reason not to have split them up or to keep them split up. They've proven their chemistry. They've proven it in years past, and they've proven it again in the sample size they've had this year. They're the most productive duo on this team when they're together, period. End of story. The stats prove that. That doesn't always happen on every team. When you have 2 skilled players like DeBrincat and Kane, who play a very similar style, it doesn't always mesh as well as they've made it mesh. So I understand the need for balance, but you can't try to formulate balance at the cost of potential production. And that's what they're doing when they split these 2 up. They have to keep them together because they know what they're going to get out of them, and they need what they're going to get out of them, which is even strength production. They have to let that happen. It's only to their detriment, the Blackhawks, that is, when they split these guys up. Put them back together, let them do what they're doing, let them produce because you need it. If you're trying to find that balance, fine. Rotate different centers in and out to see who can complement their game. But don't split them 2 up at that risk. It's not worth it. Let them play together, let them produce, and the rest will fall in line.
Yeah. I don't get not playing them together, but I'm not being paid to make those decisions. Right. We're on a podcast, and those guys are behind the back.
We got ideas, people.
Brooke, speaking of ideas, let's hear some of yours. What stands out to you as the key to the Blackhawks scoring some more? Do you think it's a lineup change or another adjustment, or just guys just gotta start doing it?
Yeah, at this point, yeah, there should be lineup changes, but even I don't think that's key at this point with this group in particular. But the only thing is they don't shoot very much. They don't shoot very often. And if they do, it usually goes way wide. It's never on net. It's just kind of whatever. I think last night was a good example. They had a 2-on-1 and the pass went all over the place. So you know what? They got to just shoot more. Like things happen. If you put the puck on net, things happen. You know, you never know. It could be a fluky bounce. And some of their goals this year actually have been just from fluky bounces. Not exactly a great shot, but you know, just things happen. And they don't, like I said, they don't always shoot a lot. If anything, they go pass first or they're just all over the place. So that's, I think the key is just put pucks on net. Just shoot the puck. I don't care if it's anywhere. Shoot it. You never know what can happen.
It seemed to me the last couple of games that everybody's been trying so hard to like get Jonathan Taves' first goal. It's like, just stop. It's going to come when it comes. You know, oh yeah, we could talk to her blue in the face about lineup changes. There's no savior coming to save this team anytime soon. This is the group we have outside of maybe a couple guys in the bottom six, like we talked about. Or the bottom line is Jonathan Taves. He's got to start scoring goals. Dominic Kubalik, he has to start scoring goals. Kirby Doc, he has to start scoring goals. These guys have to produce. They're not. There's no magic potion here. These guys who are getting paid to score goals, for the crying out loud, start scoring goals or go join the ballet. I don't care. Just do your jobs. Do your jobs. That sounds
like a dysfunctional family. Like we love them, but kind of just tolerate them, you know?
Yeah. I sound like Tom Thibodeau right now. Do your job. You're paid to score goals. Score some freaking goals already. Gail, you brought up that you wanted me to talk about the offense, but while the offense has been struggling, the defense has been getting good. And God only knows we've been dying for that to happen for the longest time. They're getting much better at protecting their own net and shutting down opportunities from opponents. So, I mean, are we nitpicking with the offense as long as the defense continues? So no, I don't think we are. What's wrong with actually being able to play defense and score goals? Like they're not exclusive to each other. You can do both. You can do both. Usually the really good teams do both. Yes, I love that the defense is playing good because to me, if I had to pick one or another, an elite defense and an elite offense, I would pick an elite defensive team. But you still got to score goals to win. What's the point of holding your opponent to 1 goal a game if you can't even win, or 2 goals? You know, San Jose, one was an empty netter. Like you can't get shut out by guys like James Reimer and expect to be a contender. It's great what's going on with the defense. I love it. I'm excited about it. We've been dying for some improved defense and we're finally seeing it. I don't think that is a coincidence that the defense got better when Jeremy Colleton hit the bricks, but you know, that's another issue. You still got to be able to score in this league. This is never going to be a team that's going to score 5 goals a night. But, you know, this team, the way the defense is playing right now, you score 2 to 3 a night, you got a chance to win. So I don't think that's too much to ask to be good at both. Maybe I'm being selfish. I don't know.
No, you're not. I don't think so.
Speaking, we'll go on to my topic that I wanted to address this week, and it's more off ice. We've tackled a lot of issues on that, so let's move to the front office right now, and the fact that the Blackhawks are taking their sweet time trying to find a replacement for Stan Bowman. Now you look what happened with Montreal over the weekend. They had their new guy interviewed and hired before they even fired their current GM. Like they wasted no time. So what the heck is going on with the Blackhawks? You know, I mean, okay, sure. Stan Bowman having to step down came out of nowhere, according to the Wirtz. I don't believe that, but you know, you had to have, even if you didn't think anything wrong was going to come out of this allegation, a good organization would have a plan set in motion just in case this exact thing had to happen. So them acting like, oh my God, we're caught off guard, I'm not buying it. You have Kyle Davidson as your interim GM. I still couldn't pick him out of a police lineup. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if he's a real guy or not. You got to get somebody in here. I understand doing your due diligence, but they're not even doing a search as far as anybody knows. They're not doing anything. So what are they waiting for? You got to have somebody in here well before the trade deadline. We just talked about that. March 21st. You got to have a guy in here weeks before that to evaluate what you have, not only with the Blackhawks, but what you have in Rockford, what you have across the globe as far as prospects. And you need somebody in place well before the draft too. So, I don't know if they're waiting on a specific candidate to become available. I don't know if they're going to hire from within. Somebody said maybe they're just going to give the job to Davidson. Well, if you're going to do that, just do it already. Like, what are you waiting for? So I'm not thrilled with how they're handling this so far. It's got me very itchy that they're going to just, matter-of-factly do something bad. Brooke, Are you okay with this slow approach, or do you agree with me and think they got to get this done quickly?
Yeah, no, I'm not okay with it. I think when you say things like, we're going to start this immediately, but in the interim, Kyle Davidson's going to be here. Okay, well, okay. No, I'm not okay with it. It's just, and something's kind of been in my brain a little bit, even like when they announced that, we had a new coach and a new general manager. I almost feel like the team is setting them up to stay. I feel like there's an ulterior motive here. I think even King is here to stay too, because the team does things a lot of backhandedly, it seems like, the Blackhawks lately. And yeah, I have a feeling that they're here to stay. I feel like there was no search to begin with, but it just sounded good to say we're searching. But yeah, I don't think there's a search at all. I think those two are here to stay, and I'm not okay with that at all. There needs to be hockey sense in the hockey department, and the team won't get better unless someone who knows hockey can get in there and evaluate this team. So yeah, I'm not okay with it at all.
Biggest issue is that it's somebody that's not from the hockey world that's making this decision, and Danny Wirtz, who's sure, he's been around hockey his whole life, but his career before joining the Blackhawks was in the spirit and beverage empire that the Wirtz family has. So like, that's not the guy I want making this decision either. So there's a lot, it's like one step forward, two steps back is what's happening right here.
Right.
Shaun, do you think that the GM search hasn't really started because they're possibly waiting for their ideal candidates contract to expire, be it with a team or possibly on one of our national television networks? What do you think?
Or us?
They don't want me.
Unfortunately, to that last point, no, I don't think it's that strategic of a holdup. I just don't think they're doing anything yet. I think they're dragging their feet. I mean, the reality is, if they wanted to make something happen, they would, and they're not. Brooke hit it on the head. They're just letting this drag on, and whether they're fooling us or pulling the wool over our eyes, or whether it really is the plan, it certainly is starting to seem that interim title for both King and Davidson, I agree with Brooke, seems to be becoming a lot more permanent as each day passes. And again, that could just be trickery. We could all be fooled, and then that could just be setting us up to think whoever they bring in, what a refreshing change, and that's a much better decision at that point, because they've dragged this on for as long as they did. But a bit of a stretch of a theory here, and I don't want to, it doesn't need much more weight than this, but the reality too is we have to think maybe they're just not doing much that's going to be newsworthy because they just don't want to be in the news right now. They've put themselves through a lot, at their own doing, and maybe there's a little more strategy where they don't want to make too many waves, and that's not the right reason, because as has been touched on, they need to be focused on hockey right now. But I mean, it could just be that they don't want to be in the news for any reason. They just want to let things transpire. And with King in place, with Davidson in place, that's what's happening. Things are transpiring. The team is winning, so they could look at it and say, "Hey, things are going better. Why change them?" Frankly, I don't think they're in a rush, and we're seeing that play out as it is. And I really wouldn't be surprised if both of those titles become more permanent in the long run.
It's like Ducharme, or what's his name, on the Canadians. Like, he was supposed to be the interim head coach, and now all of a sudden he's just there.
Taking a team to the Stanley Cup final helps.
Yeah.
It is getting that feeling. They're kind of hoping like, oh please, let the team be really good under King, so we can hire both these guys and get away with two cheap hires, because that's the actual motivation behind that. If that happens, it's got nothing to do with they're doing a good job, that you can pay them cheap because they're first year coaches, and once a word, always a word. It's always about the bottom line here. And they can see the writing on the wall. They're not selling out arenas anymore. So if they can get some guys on the cheap, that's probably going to be their option. And I did laugh over the weekend when Marc Bergevin did get fired. Of course, you see it right away. Hey, the Blackhawks should hire him. Are you dumb? Are you paying attention? Like, sure, let's bring back a guy that was here and in a position of power during the Kyle Beach scandal. Like, it had nothing to do with his track record as GM. Like, seriously, I think half of Twitter have been hit over the head with bricks the past few months. It's just, I don't get it. Yeah. Gail, we'll end this discussion real quick with you. Kyle Davidson, interim GM, are you okay with him being the one out there trying to pull a trigger on a potential Dylan Strome trade or any other deals that may get done while he's there? Strome, we've talked over and over, he probably just needs a fresh start. And I feel like he's going to get taken advantage of in this trade. And it already seems like he's not going to get an ask. Are you okay with him being the one that makes this decision?
Well, Shaun brings up a good point in that I think that for a while here, they've just been trying to let the dust settle after the scandal and just all this change. But unless he's going to be the general manager that they named general manager, no, I think that whoever it's going to be definitely needs to be in place for the trade deadline and for any deals that are coming up later here in the season. So unless it is Kyle Beach that they name, I'm not comfortable with him having that kind of power right now.
Yeah, man, it makes me think though, even if there are going to be some trades there, it's not Kyle Davidson that's ultimately making the decision. He's being told what to do from someone who probably should be stocking liquor shelves as opposed to running a hockey team, in my opinion.
And he worked under Stan for 10 years. Like, I think people are forgetting this too. You don't know how he thinks in that way.
Okay, watching Stan Bowman work and what he did over the 10 years, that's not exactly a boost of confidence for me. It's like, hey, let's get somebody who didn't watch Stan Bowman for 10 years to make some decisions. Let's try something different. All right. It's our final segment of the show. It's the shootout round. You guys love it, so we're going to keep on doing it. We're going to get some quick fire questions here to wrap up our show, some predictions and fun stuff. So we'll go right to it. Round one of the shootout. The Blackhawks have a tough week ahead of them with 3 road games at the Capitals on Thursdays, and then back-to-back games in New York, the Rangers on Saturday, the Islanders on Sunday. Real quick, around the room, how many of the possible 6 points are the Blackhawks taking this upcoming week? Gail?
They're really going to have to bounce back from that loss to the Sharks. It kind of all depends on that. So I'll say 3 points. I hope it could be 4, but I'm looking at 3.
Shaun, what do you think?
I'm going to say 3 as well.
Brooke?
Yep, I thought 3. I think there's 1 overtime loss against the Rangers and a win against the Islanders and a loss against Capitals. Sorry, I'm rambling.
I'm going to go with 1. Just 1 point. I think they're gonna get one of those 3 games of overtime. That's tough. That's a tough 3-game stretch. The Islanders, everybody seems is going to be the easiest game, but at some point they're going to start playing like the team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals the last 2 years. So we'll see. Back-to-back road games is never easy. So speaking of the upcoming week, 3 games, who is going to lead the Blackhawks in scoring between now and the next time we get back together? Who's going to have the most points these next 3 games, and how many points will it be? Shaun?
Brinky will have 5 with 3 goals and 2 assists.
Brooke, what's your prediction?
3 goals, 2 assists. DeBrincat, sorry.
Gail?
I forgot to mention that. It's me.
Gail, what's your prediction for score?
I think that Patrick Kane is due for some heroics. He's been quiet of late. I think he'll get a couple goals, but the rest of them will be assists. A couple probably that he's feeding to DeBrincat, and hopefully he'll feed Kane Tays for a goal.
I'm going to go
5 or 6 points.
I'm going to say Seth Jones is going to get 5 points because I think he'll get a goal and 4 points because he seems that he's involved in every single goal that's scored, either against or for the Blackhawks. He's on the ice. So, I'm going to say he'll get 5 points this week, goal and 4 assists.
He'll have to improve that draw pass if he wants that to happen.
Well, it's, if he does it every single time, eventually it'll get better. Let's see. We're entering a new month. December 1st is coming up here. I can't believe
Christmas.
It's December already.
Yeah, Christmas.
So let's fast forward even further to the end of the month. Do you think the Blackhawks will be at 500 by the end of December? Brooke?
No.
That's what we like. Sweet and simple. Gail?
I'd like to say yes, but I'm going to say no.
Shaun, what do you think?
They're going to be really close, but no, not yet.
Yeah, I am going to agree as well. I don't think they're sniffing 500 by the end of the month. It's a tough month, and this team is still
Has issues.
not great. Yeah. Let's see here. Round 4 of the shootout. Who will be the next player called up from the Rockford IceHogs? We talked about it a little bit earlier. Gail, who do you think is coming up from Rockford?
Well, obviously Reichel's out of the picture, so I will go with Alex Nylander. I don't think that they're going to recall a defenseman. It seems like they're rotating Caleb Jones and Wyatt Kalynuk, and Gustafsson seems to have pulled his head out of his butt lately, so he's playing all right.
All righty, that's sorry, I got distracted here by a second. Shaun, who do you think is going to be the next guy coming up from Rockford?
I'll take it the other way and stick on defense and say Ian Mitchell.
Ooh.
Ian Mitchell, yeah, he's played well the last couple weeks. Brooke, if you got to predict the next guy coming up I-90, who you got?
You guys already know the love of my life, Alex Nylander.
Yeah, I will say Nylander as well, not as who I think it should be, but that's who I think it should be, but I think at some point you got to try and get some offense going, and he's probably the best bet to do that right now. All right, our final round, our 5th and final question of the shootout, a little bit of fun one here. If you can bring back any player from either the 2019-20 season or the 2021-22 season, so any player that's departed the Blackhawks organization over the last 2 seasons, if you can bring back anyone and stick them on this team, who would it be? And this round, we are going to start with Shaun.
I don't care if his streaky production follows. I want P.S. Suter back in the lineup.
All right, Brooke, who are you bringing back?
Kind of miss Drake Caggiula, to be honest. I kind of miss his play. So yeah, I'd say Drake Caggiula.
Gail, who would you like to bring back?
I had Caggiula penciled in just for purely sentimental reasons. I always liked him. I'm surprised, Shaun, that you didn't say Matthias Janmark. He was a favorite of yours last year. But my pick is Brandon Saad, 2-way power forward. Gosh, he always he was taken for granted, I think, what he offered.
Sure. Yeah, Saad is definitely somebody I'd like to see back, but I'm going to go actually with Matthias Janmark. What he did here was really good, and he's the exact guy this bottom 6 needs. We talk about the bottom 6, that he'd be the perfect guy to have down there right now and bringing you some offense as well as some defense. Like everything we talked about this show, it's got his name written all over it. So that's who I'd like to bring back. Not necessarily at the money he got from Vegas, but I'd still like to have him on the team.
Yeah, it's the thought that counts.
A couple quick things before we officially wrap it up. Last month on a shootout round, we asked, Seth Jones was leading the team in points heading into November, and I asked, do we think he will still lead? And I think all of us except myself said he wouldn't be, and he's not. Patrick Kane has 18 points and surpassed him, but he still has 17, so he's right there. So that prediction came true for 3 of the 4 of us. And also, real quick, just want to say it was so awesome seeing Troy Murray at the Blackhawks game last night for Hockey Fights Cancer. He did the ceremonial puck drop. He was up in the booth. He's one of the nicest guys in this business, on or off the ice, and just giving our best wishes. I know I speak for all of us when I say that we're thinking of Troy and we have his back, and we can't wait to hear his voice every game. So that was very cool. Nicely done, Blackhawks, and go Troy, go. We can't wait to hear back in 100%. So that's going to wrap up this episode, the Happy Birthday Anton Lindholm episode of Blackhawks Banter. be sure you get your cards out in the mail to them. And we will be coming back next week to see how our predictions went and what we can gripe about the lineup. I'm sure that's going to be another hot topic. So thank you guys, everybody, for listening. Make sure you're subscribing either on YouTube or wherever you get your famous podcasts. Follow us all on Twitter. Get that morning skate to your inbox. Join us over on Discord. Once again, I'm Greg, joined with Gail, Shaun, and Brooke. Check us out over at thehockeywriters.com and get all of our great content there as well. And we will see you next week. Be safe, everybody.